it's teasing me today. Here we are. Advita, I'm so happy to have you talking about your stuff, which I am loving, and an exciting moment in time for you as well, because your book's coming out.
I know, yeah. 6 weeks today, I think, actually. Gosh, wow. That's come around fast, yeah. Ooh,
that has come really fast from the moment I saw you tweet about, I'm writing a book, and now
it was you that told me about the tool, Scrivener, however you say it. Honestly, lifesaver.
Yes.
Used it. Peter and I loving it. It did literally save our lives. And the way our brain works, it just helped us so much. So yeah, thank you for that, Eleanor. Honestly, brilliant tool.
Absolutely. Game changer. Well, I can't wait for the book to come out, and this is all relevant because your talk today, you're gonna give us tasters of it. Obviously not a whole book today, but tasters. So yeah, looking forward to it. I am gonna hand over. I am gonna say no more.
Thank you.
I am in the wing if you need me, but over to you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Right, let me just share my screen. Okay, here we go. Fabulous. So while that's, I think that's, hopefully you can see my screen. There we go. Hello, everyone. So pleased to be here today on this wonderful showcase. And as my title quite clearly says, I am going to talk to you today about 5 steps on how you can build inclusive cultures so people can thrive. So my name is Advita Patel, and you could just see peeking out from the corner, in my neon sign, I own an internal communications and employee experience consultancy called Comms Rebel, and I'm based in the very sunny Manchester today. And I always like to say the weather in Manchester because people have a bias that it's always raining, and it rains only 90% of the time. So today it's very sunny. I have worked in internal communication and employee experience for 20 odd years. In 2020, I set up Comms Rebel, and then a few months later, I also co-founded a second business called A Leader Like Me. And this is where my kind of story comes in terms of how I got involved in inclusive cultures and ensuring that we are working together with organizations to help them understand how they can cultivate inclusivity so people can thrive. So A Leader Like Me was initially created to help underrepresented people thrive in their careers. And Priya and I, who's my co-founder for A Leader Like Me, set this up because Priya and I had a chat when I first started Comms Rebel, and I asked her to be my mentor because I didn't really see women like me setting up businesses. And I wanted to work with a South Asian woman specifically who had set up her own internal communications agency and understood potentially some of the challenges that I might go through. And as Priya and I were chatting about our journeys, career journeys, we realized we have very similar experiences. Now, bearing in mind, Priya is probably about 15 years older than me and is based in Canada. Her experience was very similar to my experience. And that really made us reflect that have things really changed in the workplace, not only in terms of us, in terms of women and women of colour, but also in other areas such as disability and sexuality and gender. So we started to do a little bit more research in this space, more than we have done. And I've always kind of worked within the kind of inclusive bucket anyway. It's always been an interest of mine, but we want to formalise our learning. So using A Leader Like Me, we worked with quite a few women from across the globe to try and understand some of their challenges and set up a membership. And then throughout this discussion that we were having, we decided that we were going to write a book. And today in my session with you, I'm going to share, some insights that we discovered from writing this book that I hope helps you contribute to the conversations in your workplace or with your clients about how they can be more inclusive in the work that they do, because it is something that isn't really going to go away. The world is changing and has changed rapidly since, pre-COVID, but definitely since COVID. Lots of people are paying attention. The generation that's now coming into the workforce are more interested in what inclusion looks like and how they can be included into the discussions. It's also going to be one of the most diverse generations that we have ever experienced since we've existed as human beings, and they will have so much more questions and curiosity around what organizations are doing to retain them and support them. And the days where people may have stayed for financial benefits is now slipping down the pecking order, and people now want to see, actually, if I'm going to give you my skills and my talent, how are you helping me belong in this space? So without further ado, I'm going to share with you some how to kick off. So the first step is to try and understand what is DEI and what does that mean. So sorry, I'm just going to get into my slide deck here. So it's stopped sharing. Hopefully you can see that. There we go. So there's going to be 5 areas I'm going to talk to you today. So the DEI why, so starting with the why behind the DEI, exploring the I in DEI. So those of you, just to split the acronym up, you may call it, says diversity, equity and inclusion. We use, in terms of the book, we talk about equity, and I'll explain the difference a bit later on. You may call it EDI, you may call it something completely different, but basically we're talking about diversity, equity and inclusion. We're going to be talking about exploring the I, so the inclusion part of DEI, talk about DEI evolution, and then we're going to talk a little bit about bias, and hopefully at the end of this we'll have some time for any questions if anybody's there, and then I can tell you how you can get in touch with me if you want to go away and reflect. And as you can see on the screen, this is our beautiful front cover, which hopefully you'll see in the bookstores in the next few weeks, but you can also pre-order this book, which I'll tell you a little bit more about as we go through the presentation. So making the case for DEI, before you start anything and before you kind of start solving problems or having any kind of solutions to things, we advise you to kind of take a step back. Take a step back and understand, what is it that we're trying to do in this organization, or what is it that my client is trying to achieve in the work that they're doing, or even on a personal level, why does DEI matter to you? What's important to you? And one of the reasons we wrote this book is because we recognize that there's lots and lots and lots of information out there that people can sometimes get confused about. It can be a bit scary. It can be a little bit overwhelming. So what ends up happening when we're not comfortable in that space is that we step back and we don't pay attention to what's happening because our minds are busy already. You know, we've got lots of other stuff going on. So we're thinking, well, I don't know enough, so I can't get involved in this discussion. So we advise you to kind of take a step back and think about your why behind EDI. And we talk about the 6 R's when we think about the why behind the EDI. So the first one is rights. So is it the right thing to do? You know, what does these human rights and human belonging mean to you in your organization? How does that fit into the work that you're doing? Is it the right thing to do for you right now? You know, what areas should you be focusing on? Think about some of the challenges that you might have with some of the inclusion problems that you might be going through in your organization, and try and understand, is this the right thing for us to do right now? Or should we focus on this specific space right now? And this is why we want you to, when I work with organizations and I work with leaders, they want to do so much in such a short space of time. And I remember working with one organization probably about a year ago now, and there was so much pressure on them because they had heard, and they'd done some focus groups, and they'd heard some really uncomfortable things what colleagues were telling them. So they brought in somebody, and this person created an action plan for them, and on the action plan there was over 200 actions for them to deliver within 6 months. Now that's just unrealistic, you know, unless you have got a dedicated team of people who are focusing purely on that specific area. Delivering that number of actions in that space of time is going to be difficult, and it's going to be challenging, and you're going to risk going into performative action and tokenistic. And what I mean by that is, on the outside, it looks like you're doing great things, but internally the processes are broken, and you're only really doing it to show that you are good, or you're trying to prove that you're doing good stuff. So be really realistic with what you're trying to achieve, and whether that's the right thing for you to do in that moment, or do you need to focus on this specific area of work first, and really have a deep conversation with your leaders and within your team as well, to try and understand what that looks like for you. Then you need to kind of think about the representation when you're thinking about the DIY. Are you, as an organization, with the clients that you work with, the people that support you, are they representative of the customers that you serve and the publics that you support? Are they representative of the community that you sit in? Are they representative of the employees that you might have at the entry level? and be really honest with yourself in terms of are we representing how we want to be represented in this space that we're in? And we have spoken, there's so much research and evidence and studies out there that show that having a representative workforce that sits right from the entry level right to the C-suite can bring in better profit, better inclusion, better employee engagement, better innovation. So have a look at your representation. What does that look like for you? Is it fair? Is it transparent? If it isn't, then how do you get more representation in your organization and within your team that you support? And also on a personal level, because DEI is very personal, think about what it looks like for you. Who are your trusted advisors? Write down the kind of list of names of those people, and are they representative of the people that you might be communicating or speaking with? And be quite honest with yourself again on this. Then you need to look at retention. What does retention look like in your organization? Are you losing people quickly? Is there a pattern of where these people are, types of people that live in leaving, the different demographics of people who are leaving? Is there anything that gives you the story behind that? Or are you doing really well in retention? So have a think about what retention looks like for you as well. And then thinking about retention, what's recruitment like? Again, I spoke with an organization not so long ago about their challenges in recruiting different types of people from different and various backgrounds, from not only in terms of demographic diversity, but cognitive diversity as well. So they wanted to kind of expand their net a little bit further and attract people from all different backgrounds because they recognized that it was really important to have recruitment, have people from the recruitment pool that could add value and add better, bigger things to the organization. But when we looked down their recruitment processes, they were only advertising their role down one specific route, which only attracted one type of person. When they looked at their recruitment team, the people that they brought in from outside to support them, that recruitment team was very dominant culture. There was no diversity in that team. It's very male dominated of a certain age. And that bias, and we're going to get into bias in a second, but you really need to think about what, recruitment, and if you've got the right language around some of the terminologies that you're using. Are you using the right people to help you recruit those people? Are you in the spaces where you want these individuals to kind of come in and support you as well? So think about what recruitment is for you. And then reputation, what is reputation for you in this organization? And I've used the Starbucks cup here because there was you may have seen a few years ago in the news where two black men were kicked out of Starbucks by their staff because of discrimination, and their CEO's response was really great response in terms of this is unacceptable and this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it. And they shut down the Starbucks in the US and they put everybody through a proper training program to help them understand their biases and stereotypes and discrimination. And Starbucks' reputation, exceeded what anybody expected. And then if you take the CEO of Budweiser, who recently sent out a statement following some backlash they received from using a trans woman in their campaign, and their response and how that reaction was, you'll see the difference in reputation. And so many people stepped away from that brand and said, we're never going to buy that brand, because basically that Budweiser CEO left that trans person and that community hanging. They didn't support them. They allowed them to be attacked and then actually wrote a statement that didn't support them in any way. And if you're going to step into that space and say that we are allies of this community and doesn't matter what people say to us, then you need to stay bold and you need to stay strong, because you will get backlash. But if your organization is not ready for that, then don't go down that route until you are ready for it. Because when you go down that route and then something happens and then you write a statement that's not meaningful or have any kind of support behind the reason you did the campaign, people are going to lose trust in you. And that's really important for you to think about as well, reputationally. Is your leadership team ready for taking risks and making bold statements? Because if they're not, then you need to do the work behind the scenes to understand what you need to do to get there. And then results. So you need to look at your results when it comes to your why. Are your results the best they can be? And when I talk about results, I'm talking about the profit, I'm talking about retention, I'm talking about recruitment, I'm talking about absence, I'm talking about employee engagement and experience. What are those results looking like? What are your people telling you? Are your results where you need them to be, or can they be better? And sometimes a part of this may not be our role, and that's absolutely okay, but you need to be encouraging this conversation in your organization, to ask those curious questions. We'll think about actually what is the outcome of what we're trying to do and what results is it giving me. And if those results are not aligning, then you need to think about, right, what do we need to do to help us grow the results that we need to make the impact that we have to make sure that we're a sustainable business. So there's more detail about this, obviously, in the work that we've covered and in the book that we covered. So, but if there's any questions around these 6 steps, then please just drop me a note and I can tell you a little bit more about them. But it just gives you a starting point, and it allows you just to take that step back and be very honest and open about where are you, what does it look like, why are you doing this, what's important for the organization, what's important for your clients, and what's important to you. And then putting all that down on paper so you've got a bit of a direction on where you want to go and what you want to do. So that's the DEI why and why we need to focus on that. Then we go into the I in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that is not only in terms of the inclusion side, but looking at ourselves. And what I mean by that is there are 3 kind of key areas that we as individuals, we need to be aware of some of the work that we do. And the first one is flashlight. So this is like looking for yourself. You know, do you feel included or excluded based on what you find? As people, you know, we are naturally want to belong, right? We are not meant to be working completely solo. We're not meant to be living completely on our own. We are communities, you know, we have people that we connect with. And when we work in organizations, we want to belong in that space. When we look at our leadership team, we want to see ourselves represented in that leadership team. When we look at the strategies and the policies that organizations develop, we want to see ourselves reflected in those policies and in those strategies. And if you're in a dominant culture, then that sometimes is a bit easier depending on who's developed those policies. But sometimes we need to kind of take a step back again and think, is this representative of other people who may be a bit different from me? You know, and what are you looking for and what are you going to find in that space? So putting that flashlight out there and being curious and looking around to see, actually, are we inclusive? Can people belong? Can people thrive in what we're doing? And then once you're kind of looking for yourself and for others, you need to look at yourself. So what do you like about yourself, and what don't you like about yourself? And this is uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable, and sometimes it can take you to discomfort. Because when I did this activity and exercise for myself, it was very uncomfortable. And I had to really look into my own biases and my own beliefs and my own self-limiting belief as well, in terms of, why do I believe this about this one particular group of people? Why is my thinking around this? Why am I making assumptions about individuals? And it can, you can feel a bit attacked, and people will call you out if you say something that's not fair or people find uncomfortable in itself. And this is where you hear that, and I hate this phrase when people use it as a negative connotation, when people say you're too woke or you're too PC, the world's gone mad, like I don't understand why I can't say things like this anymore. And it's not about that. It's about recognizing that things have changing. Language evolves and people evolve, and it's not fair that some people get to experience certain things and other people don't. And in our world, we have to make sure that we, as much as we can control in the space that we are in, that we can help defend and support and be the allies that other people may need us to be, and across all characteristics, not only in terms of race or sexuality. You need to kind of think about, what am I doing to contribute to this conversation, and how can I add value? And it is about, are you going to look closer, or are you going to turn away from that discussion? And I use, and I'm not talking about, there are some things that, can be a bit overwhelming, again, especially things like oppressive systems and systemic bias. But look at your own workplace, or look at the support that you're giving. And like I said, if somebody, if Rebecca every day is getting asked to go and make the tea in the room, or Joanna is asking to take notes all the time, or Sunita is being told to organise the office party, then have a look about why. Like, why are they being asked, and why is Raj or John or David not being asked to do that kind of stuff? And we can contribute to that. We can say, actually, I think this time it should be John that should take the notes in this meeting, or maybe Stuart should go and get that cup of tea for the team. And those are small ripples, I would say, that can create big waves in the organization. And you can start off, you don't need to be like, right, I'm going to rip up this policy and I need to do this and I need to learn about this. It's those small actions that can help understand where you're trying to go and where your organization needs to go. Then the beacon, and the beacons are the guiding lights or the warning lights, right, of what you're trying to do. It shows you the way forward. People will probably look at you as an influencer or impact, or somebody who's got impact in certain areas of this work. And it's about, are you going to choose safety for everybody and fight to stay where you are, or are you just going to stay a bit quiet and stay silent? And I can see the attraction of staying a bit quiet, because it is complicated at times, and you don't want to rock the boat, and you don't want to be seen as a disruptor in a negative way. But sometimes we do need to that beacon, and we do need to step up and shine that light out to people and go, this isn't fair, and this isn't what we're trying to do. So this is about reflecting on your own work and who you're trying to be and what you're trying to contribute as a colleague or as a client or a consultant or whatever work that you're doing in that space. And then we talk about the DEI evolution. And this is about progress. So as you can see, there's 6 steps here on the slide. We start off with exist. So exist is where you're comfortable where you are right now, and you're not ready to change, or there's no need to change, or you believe there's no need to change, or your organization believes there's no need to change. Once you kind of start investigating, exploring this space a little bit more, you go into enter. So you're dipping your toes in a little bit. You're making sure that you are, trying to speak up about certain things. So this is where we talk about those black boxes and rainbows. So if you recall back in 2020, after the horrific murder of George Floyd, a load of people put black boxes on their Instagram post to show support for Black Lives Matter without actually thinking about the impact of what those black boxes were doing. And ultimately, when we did that, it was a very performative action, because we were silencing the voices of Black people who were trying to raise visibility of some of the marches and stuff that they were doing. And we have to really consider what that means for us as an organisation. And you may also see lots of organisations write really powerful statements about how they're going to support Black Lives Matter and how they're going to make sure that they're doing the work they need to do. But if you go back those 3 years and look at the people who've actually done the work, what have they done? How have they supported that? And that's where it becomes performative and tokenistic. Once you kind of understand some of the stuff that you have done that hasn't added value, you may start educating yourself a little bit more about what this looks like. So you'll read the books, you'll go to a training session, you'll watch things like what I'm doing today, and you'll start understanding a little bit more about where your education gaps are and where the gaps are in your organization. Once you start understanding those education gaps, you're going to embrace, and this is where you understand where the business is going, the social care of the business. Your organization may hire a practitioner in this space, a specialist who can support you. There'll probably be a plan as well that focuses on equity and diversity in your organization. Once that plan is in place, you're going to engage, which is about realizing as a group where you need to focus your effort and energy on. This is where you may feel confident that people in your organization speak up, so it's psychologically safe in that space as well. And this is where your employees start getting a little bit engaged, because they can see and recognize the efforts that are being put, so they are working towards ensuring that they belong and everybody else around them belongs as well. And then once you've done the engagement bit, you go into the final step, which is embed. And this is where it's part of everything that you do. It's baked into the culture of the organization. It isn't a separate pillar or a separate entity in your organization. People talk about inclusion as everyday pieces of conversations that they have. The communications that goes around is all about embedding the inclusive part of what you do, and it's not a separate topic on an agenda. It's part of everyone's conversation. What you'll find is that most people are on those step 2, 3, and 4. That's what we found in our studies and the organizations that we work in. So this is about you understanding where are you on these steps and what does that look like. And we are developing a tool to help you identify where you are personally on these steps and where your organization is on this step as well. And then we go into bias. Now, bias is a really big topic that takes a bit of time to understand in terms of why do we talk about bias. And bias isn't right or wrong. It just is. It exists in all of us. If we didn't have bias, we wouldn't be able to live the life that we are living right now. We'd be absolutely bogged down with the decisions that we have to make. We'd be procrastinating forevermore. We wouldn't be able to do some of the things that we are doing. And it exists. It isn't wrong, it isn't right, it just exists. What we do need to think about bias is, why do we have bias about certain things? And there's a really interesting book by Daniel Kahneman called Thinking Fast and Slow. And in his book, he says, as human beings, we make around, on average, anything between 20 to 40,000 decisions a day, from picking up a pen to brushing your teeth to choosing what brand of coffee you're going to buy in the supermarket, instantaneous decisions. And if we didn't have those instantaneous decisions, like I said, we're living this very complicated, convoluted, very procrastinating world, and we wouldn't be able to survive if we didn't have that. But where we need to be aware of our bias is when we are making decisions not really based on data or research, but based on our own lived experiences. And when we make decisions based on our own lived experiences, we have to look at the community that has surrounded us and the environment that we grew up in. So we can make assumptions about certain individuals, and we can make assumptions about certain stereotypes based on our education, based on our environment, and based on our family and friends. And if you don't have a representative network of friends or a diverse network of friends or family, then you're probably going to have one point of view about certain issues. And this is how social media works, to be honest, because in the social media, they want you to stay on their site for as long as possible. So they will show you tweets, or they'll show you LinkedIn messages, or they'll show you Insta posts or TikToks that relate to your beliefs. So when you see these people enhancing your beliefs and you're like, oh, well, more people think this is what everybody thinks, our bias is formed even more so. And what I always say to people is that be really cautious about that. And again, find different people who you wouldn't normally connect with, whether you agree or disagree with their views, connect with them to see what they are saying. And it doesn't mean that you have to agree with them, but it just allows your bias to be balanced a bit more about some of the thoughts you may have about certain individuals, certain political parties, certain policies, because we can really fall into that trap of believing our own thoughts around compared to, because everybody else around us is very similar in the way we think as well. And I always talk about productive disagreements here. And if we can absolutely understand what our biases are, we can have productive disagreements rather than going to this rage or absolute disbelief that we can sometimes face, especially on social platforms where there's this no boundary how people talk to each other. And that happens when we are so set in our way and we're not actually being curious in how we are approaching individuals or different people who may not be from the same background as us. So in the book, we talk about the Spark framework, and the Spark framework is about sparking conversations. So the first step in the Spark framework is seeking out information and find evidence that counter-argues your opinion. And this, again, is really uncomfortable, but we have to do this. So if we've got a thought about something, it's good practice to go and find the opposite thought and see what that opposite thought is saying and find the balance in between that. And then it's about asking those powerful questions that can help you dig deeper. So asking those curious questions. So if somebody has got a point of view about something or a point of view about a certain group of people, it's asking them with kindness to say, can you help me explain where you got to this, to that? Because I'm really struggling to understand that. Or how can you help me understand how you found those data points? Because I'm really struggling to figure out how we got to that, that kind of outcome. Once you kind of ask those powerful questions, it's about adjusting your mindset. And this can be hard, especially when you have family or friends who think a certain way and you end up going into lots of debates and discussions about them. But we have to be educating ourselves and adjusting our mindset about certain thoughts we may have grown up with and how that may now have been adjusted based on our own research and evidence that we've seen. So thinking about how you adjust your mindset is really important. And then revising our thinking and views of points as well. So we may have felt this way about something, but it's okay to say, actually, after some research and some discussions and meeting different people, I've changed my mind. And this is what I now think. And we don't often admit that, all of this work, we will fail. There's not about if we fail, it's when we fail, because you will fail in this and you will make mistakes and you will say things that are not appropriate. You may make assumptions about individuals and you may learn as you go ahead. And that's absolutely okay. Don't ever let that put you off in exploring other people and other different demographics. And then, as I said throughout this, is kindness is critical. It's not about niceness, oh, I don't want to hurt their feelings or anything like that. It's about kindness, being kind to them and saying, look, this isn't what you have just shared is inaccurate based on this research that I've done and the studies that I've done, and this is why it's inaccurate. So I just want to kind of work with you to understand how we can help you understand this point of view a little bit better. And that's where the kindness comes in. It's not about shooting people down or making them feel terrible or shaming them in any way, because we do all carry a lot of shame that can stop us progressing. And we want to try and help people get from point A to point B with as much kindness as we can. And if they don't want to take our advice on board, then we need to make a decision whether that's somebody that we want in our world, or if that's the organization that we want to be part of, or do we need to step away and do something else or go somewhere else. And that, again, is okay to have that decision. So some final thoughts on this. So remember, this is all about the conversation rather than the campaign that you might be trying to do, or trying to persuade people to, to do something that doesn't have any meaning behind it. But think about the conversation you want to have around inclusion and what that looks like. Throughout our book, we talk about progress, not perfect. I cannot tell you how important this is. None of this, you'll never be perfect at any of this ever. This world evolves all the time, and there'll be different language points coming out, there'll be different behaviors coming out, there'll be different policies that come out. You can't be expected to know everything. You're not the DEI expert. You're somebody who's got an interest in this space, I hope, and wants to help other people thrive in the work that you're doing. So there will be some elements of not getting it right, not getting it perfect, but just be 1% better than what you were yesterday. That's all we can ask of ourselves. Like, what did I learn yesterday, and how can I implement it in my delivery today? How can I keep moving forward and learning about different areas and different thinking? And that's really important as well. And then if you want, like I said, if you want us to come in, Supriya and I, Supriya is based in Canada and I'm in the UK, but we do virtual events and stuff together. So if there's anything that you want us to come and talk to you about, if there's any keynotes or workshops or consulting around the comms element, all of this, then please do get in touch with me you'll probably find me mostly on LinkedIn and on Twitter, but I'm also on Instagram under my name, which is a benefit of having a unique name. You can find us on most platforms, like I said, Priya as well, but we also do a podcast called Amplifying Diverse Voices, which we have done a couple of seasons where we've interviewed. The first season we interviewed underrepresented people from across the globe about their journeys, career journeys. The second season was about the book writing. One of the things that we're really keen to do more of is to dispel any myths about publishing and book writing, because we want more underrepresented people, women specifically, and women of colour, to write more business books. And we wanted to demystify what publishing is like. So we've done a podcast series on our experience, some of the challenges that we faced, how we overcame them, to get to this wonderful book cover that you can see on your screen today. And I also host a second podcast called Calm Edge Rebels, which I do with my two very good friends, Trudy Lewis and Jenny Field. And on this podcast, we talk about how we can live our best life to the best of the ability that we have within the environments that we live in as well. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing.